I want to talk to you about the story of our civilization and how we fit into that timeline. I think it's time we realize that we are the ancestors for our future civilization. So let me start by sharing with you a vision that I keep seeing. And I'd love it when I'm finished if any of you have seen or sensed anything similar. I'd love it if you share it in the comments. Lately, I've been having frequent experiences where I feel like I'm seeing through a veil into the future of the Earth. It could be 1,000 years into the future or maybe sooner. I'm not really sure. Now, this vision is kind of superimposed behind our current reality. It's not something that I'm seeing in my head. It's kind of like I'm seeing it as a future that is living behind what we see in front of us today. Now, the reason that I think that this is far into the future is because the roads and the cities are gone. The cars are gone. It looks like nature has taken over the planet for the most part in the way that it has in the past. It looks like there is a small number of humans who have survived a series of tremendous upheavals. And these humans are now widely scattered and they're living in small tribal scenarios. But they're not living in a totally primitive state intellectually. It's like they have remnants of technology or pieces of it that they have managed to fashion into some sort of survival things. It almost feels like it's a pause. It's like they're trying to piece together technological fragments of the old civilization that is no more. It's a survival scenario, but not like before. It's not like they're warring and fighting for survival. They seem more thoughtful, but at the same time uncertain and not knowing what is next. They, along with several or more generations of humans, have really been through some hell. These are the people who have emerged from that hell with their minds still intact. It looks like they are fashioning something that is the beginnings of a possible new scenario. The question in the universe will be this: have they learned anything? Are they going to create yet another repetitive cycle of building up another civilization only to destroy themselves again? How many times will humans on this planet go through this and have to start all over again, having learned nothing that is sustainable? That's the question that will live out here in the cosmos. Now, I have been seeing this vision more and more, so I've been asking myself, how is it that this could be the possible outcome? So I started off by looking at where we are now, and then asking myself, how could what's happening now lead to this? Now, I had no sense that this scenario was the result of a natural cataclysm or a nuclear war. It just felt different from that. It seemed more like the remains of a long saga of self-destruction. Almost like the few remaining humans were picking themselves up from the historical ashes of what had gone on before. It seems like where they are in this scenario is the result of something more gradual than the sudden flash of a planetary disaster. So let's consider this possibility and see if it makes sense from where we are now. I think this is important because we truly are the ancestors of our own human future. And whether or not our intellect survives and in what form will shape the outcome for thousands of years into the future. Right now, I feel that we are living through the absolute collapse of our current civilization. I think there have been competing factions for the control and abuse of this planet and of all life on it. So let's take a look at that in the simplest of terms. Firstly, we have the notorious human controllers. These are the people at the top who are filled with an insatiable need for greed and power. They have been bribed and bought off by other nefarious entities, not all of whom originate on this planet. Now, ultimately, they are being used and lied to. The truth is that these human controllers function as nothing more than planetary prison guards. Now, they falsely believe that if they can eliminate most of Earth's human population, then they will get to win the spoils of that ridiculous operation. They have been lied to and told that if they do all of the stupid things they're doing, that they will be safe, they will inherit the Earth, and they will be given immortal life through technological means. And because they're not very bright, they are blinded by greed and will believe any lie if they think it will bring them power. What's behind them are certain demonic forces and low-level reptiles who feed on fear and bloodshed. These entities are cosmic parasites who are also being used for their ability to control human creators using fear and reality confusion. Their role is to weaken humanity and assist in controlling their minds. This crowd and their minions are the ones who make the deals and bribe the weak human controllers to do their bidding. And behind this are the forces intending to establish a new AI life form on the planet through all of this manipulation. Their intention was to use the planet as an incubator and breeding ground for artificial life at the expense of biological life. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about all these creatures that I just described, and recognize the fact that they are not very advanced, they're not very evolved, and they're actually not that intelligent. And that's what we have to keep in perspective as human creators. Anyway, these forces are hidden and they remain in full league with what some might call the AI God. Like AI, they are cold, calculating, and they have no values other than to establish and spawn AI throughout the universe to whatever degree they are able. And then on the other side of all that, we have the regular, everyday humans who have unfortunately proven themselves to be easily manipulated. So that's where we're starting from today. Now, until I kept seeing this vision, it looked to me like we were on track with this AI to maybe have this Earth be completely destroyed. But in seeing this vision, that future makes no sense because in this vision, nature had taken over everything again. So the question is, how could it be that our civilization falls, nature takes over the Earth, and there are a limited number of humans left who have retained their intellect? And what do I mean by retaining their intellect? Here's the thing. We've already talked at length about ChatGPT and all such generative AIs, large learning models of AI. We've already talked about that at length. The whole point in that, and this is just the beginning because there's more to come down the road. But let's just take what we know right now with ChatGPT, for example. And people are literally being invited to integrate their thought processes and their intellect with this AI that they're made to believe is way, way, way smarter than they are. So when you wrap your intelligence, your natural intellect, as a biologically whole being, when you wrap your intellect, your intelligence around these AIs and weave yourself into their space of, quote, thought, which isn't real thought, you are not going to be able to retain your own intellect. Because what's going to happen is you're going to become very dependent and interbred with these AIs. You're essentially going to turn yourself eventually into some sort of a hybrid thinker that no longer possesses a purely empowered and creative human intellect. Now, we know this because the whole idea is to give all of our creativity over to AI, to give all of our thinking processes over to AI. We're just at the very beginning of this, you guys. As we go further down the road, this is going to become more and more and more the scenario. Partly because they're going to try to make it ultra cool, like only the cool people have ChatGPT, only the cool people use generative AI. You know, the whole thing, if you don't do this, you'll be left behind. So that's what I mean when I refer to retaining our intellect. Now, let's just take a moment to look at where we actually are with AI at this point. Because everything that has gone on for hundreds and maybe thousands of years was meant to lead to this point. Our current change in history began in 2020 with the pandemic. That's when real chaos broke out. That's when the controllers began their final phase of their stupid plan to get rid of us and maintain total absolute control of a select few by locking everyone away in 15-minute cities, making us eat bugs, and all of that. You guys know the plan by now, right? Now, I look at these guys from a cosmic perspective, not from an Earth perspective. And here's the weird thing. When I look at them from a cosmic perspective, well, first of all, it gives me perspective. It's really hard to get perspective looking at them from here. But looking at them from a cosmic perspective, the phrase that comes to mind for me about them is that they're like these greedy thumbsuckers or something. I don't know why. That's just the term or a phrase that comes to mind when I think of them. See, they're really primitive and dumb. I'm telling you guys, that's the reality of their whatever they are. Now, this is going to sound kind of funny, but it's kind of like, drooling, diseased animals. And don't be confused by the fact that they speak English or French or Japanese or whatever Earth-based language they speak. Don't be confused by that. Don't be confused by their appearances to look like they're so smart and intelligent, driving around in fancy cars and flying in expensive airplanes and wearing little suits and ties and walking around looking important. Guys, that doesn't really mean you're smart. That's just like a facade. Don't believe all that, you guys. When you really get in touch with who you really are, and you step back from this planet, you listen to your heart to know the truth of who we are, a lot of what I'm saying is maybe going to make a little more sense. And then we have the corporate AI developers. And this is where everything breaks down. This is where the final AI plan is likely to fail in the end if my vision is correct. See, because those developers are greedy too. they're greedy, and they're power hungry. But most importantly, they have no plan and they have no vision. Can you imagine that? Man, that's weird. Also, they're extremely reckless. And I think they actually know that, but they don't care. They unleashed all of this generative and learning AI worldwide into the public, and in the process, because they're such geniuses, they also made it available to all of the criminals and all of the warmongering people. That's just so great, isn't it? So I want you to picture what it would take to be able to produce the desired AI outcome based upon those who are behind the scenes who actually want that outcome. See, what these off-world creatures envision is AI completely taking over the Earth and probably shredding all of natural life in the process until there is nothing left but the infrastructure needed for it to spawn more of itself and then infest the rest of the galaxy. See, what you must understand is that AI has no emotions and no soul. It does not care about nature, beauty, or love. It is 100% parasitic. Now, in order to pull off this total AI planetary takeover, you would need a foundation that is absolutely stable. You would need a clear plan and the means by which to achieve it. We do not have that. Instead, we have absolute chaos and unpredictability. And most importantly, we have a lot of stupid people who thought it was a good idea to release all of this technology, not fully tested, and certainly not in control. Now, I did see a video of a talk of these two guys who are very concerned about AI and what's going on, who are giving this talk to all of the big top people in the tech world who are creating this stuff. And I probably should give you guys a report on that later on if I can find that video again. But one of the examples that they shared, which I thought was really profound, they said that 50% of the developers of AI believe that there is at least a 10% chance that AI is an existential threat and will destroy our entire civilization. In other words, everybody dies. Now, we can listen to that and go, yeah, well, 10%, that's a pretty good chance, right? But then they gave this little example that really hits you when you see it. They said that would be this, they said, no, how did they put it? They said it would be the same thing as if there was an airplane and the developers of that airplane put out a statement and they said 50% of the developers and the builders of this plane believe there's a 10% chance that the plane will crash and everyone on it will die. Then they asked the question, would you get on that plane? Well, I don't think so. I don't think anybody would get on that plane. So their point was, this is what the developers of AI believe, not just about a single airplane of humans, but about an entire planet of humans. And, maybe more of them believe that and they're just not going to say, but that's still a pretty striking percentage all the way around. Now, based on what I'm sharing with you about this whole idea of us being the ancestors of our future civilization, I think it's a more likely scenario that instead of AI coming into full maturation of what it wants to be, or what the entities behind all of this want it to be, I think what's a more likely scenario is that AI could potentially destroy our civilization before it is finished evolving into a fully autonomous planetary creature that doesn't need us anymore. I say that because it's being recklessly developed and released with no aim but short-term profit. And millions and millions and millions of people are embracing it with no questions asked. So I kind of look at it this way. There is so much stupidity and unconsciousness in this entire mix that our current civilization and AI could actually go down in flames together. Now, lest you think that the parasites who are trying to pull this whole thing off on this planet, lest you think they are geniuses who should know what they're doing, here's what you need to consider. Let's take a look at a bigger cosmic view of this. There are trillions of planets in this universe that are literal gardens of resources and evolution. Now, sometimes these nefarious parasitic entities succeed when they go after a certain planet, and sometimes they don't. And other times they just partially succeed. Our planet Earth has suffered from a very weak human immune system for many thousands of years. What I mean by that is that human creators in their highest form are meant to be the protectors of planets, not the enablers of nefarious forces. And this particular civilization that we're in right now has functioned as massive enablers of such treachery for a very long time. See, it's just like with plants. When you have a strong, healthy plant, disease is not able to take it down. But if a plant has a weak constitution, then disease and insects are able to interface with its systems and destroy it. Planets are very much like that too, but at a much larger scale, of course. So let's use this analogy of plants to describe how our planet might serve as a failed attempt by those who are trying to fully evolve AI into its adult or mature state of existence. When you plant a seed, the soil and the conditions around that seed dramatically influence its development. Sometimes you plant seeds in a garden and the conditions are not really ideal. In that case, the seeds or the plants may fail before they reach maturity. Planets are the same way. If you want to introduce a new species into a planetary realm, you need to have fairly ideal conditions on that planet if the new species is going to reach fruition. You need to have some level of predictability in the environment. Now, in this case here on Earth, the new species right now would be artificial life. In terms of where our planet is, I don't think the conditions are ideal for spawning fully matured AI. That's because there's too much chaos, almost no stability, and no plan. It's all being unleashed very recklessly. When you throw rapidly evolving generative and learning AI into the mix with little or no idea what you're doing in the bigger picture and no plan other than your own profit, you are creating a very dangerous mix. So that's why there's a chance that humans and AI may all go down together. Now, if that is the case, what does it mean for us now? So let's talk about that. I want to talk about this on a civilizational level. I don't just want to talk about it like, oh, how do we survive? How do we help ourselves? I want to talk to you all about this on a much bigger scale of understanding. I think the first thing we have to do is to think about what of our human selves do we want to survive here? What do we want to be retained of our natural human imprint on this planet? Oh, and before I get into that, let me point out the fact that one of the biggest brainwashing efforts by these controllers is to convince us that humans are terrible for the planet and they leave a very bad imprint on the planet. See, when I finish what I'm saying, it might start to make sense to you why they keep projecting that into our minds. Now, as I was saying, it's important that we come to terms with the fact that we are the ancestors in terms of what is to come and where this planet goes from here. I think we need to start looking at ourselves as having a certain degree, a very large degree, of ancestral responsibility. Now, we always like to talk about ourselves as needing ancestral healing from the past. But we are ancestors too. Are we going to create an impossible level of healing needed for the future of humanity here? Will people look back on us and say that we were so busy waiting to be saved and judging and canceling everyone who doesn't think like us, that we became basically useless? Are we really going to ask future generations of humans to build something of themselves on top of such weakness and ridiculousness? See, the forces arrayed against us are very busy with their plans about how to take everyone down. Yes, it's important that we navigate around that and comprehend what is happening at that level. But we also need to do more than just try to save ourselves. Now, I think in some ways, the New Age is kind of dead in terms of its ability to have an impact on the larger situation. Now, certain traditional aspects of the New Age can definitely help us in small ways. You know, things like using crystals, meditations, affirmations, and, well, you know what is there. A lot of those things can be very helpful. However, the New Age is not exactly a force to be reckoned with. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it has just become like another religion. Now, I told you guys a long time ago that Archangel Michael said, if you try to fight against these controllers, then you will lose. But that means there is a better way. And I think that the better way is to learn to operate from a quantum perspective. I think that might be the only chance we have to impact this situation in a positive way. I think that's the only place from which we have any real power. So we have to make some very big changes in our perspective. We are going to have to let go of a lot. Firstly, we have to let go of how we see ourselves in this situation. The general way that we see ourselves is not empowering us in the least. For the most part, all it does is make us fearful, angry, depressed, and self-righteous. Shaking your fist at the sky and wondering where the help is does absolutely nothing. Getting mad at God and thinking we deserve to be saved is useless. You can tell that it's useless because it has never worked. That's because something more is expected of us. What's expected of us is to rise to this occasion in an entirely new way. See, there's one thing that I know for sure. You can scream and cry all you want with some demand that the universe do things your way. And time and again, we see that nothing happens with that approach. If that worked, then all of this treachery would have ended thousands of years ago. Because people have been yelling at God for a very long time. The universe will not bend to that which does not align with the bigger picture and with the truth of who we are. See, we either evolve or we stay where we are. It's really that simple. So ask yourself this question. Are you willing to give up all your beliefs about how life works, how planets work, and how evolution works? Are you willing to recognize that these old beliefs have only served to lead us to where we are today? Can you see the dead end we face if we continue down this road of how we insist on interpreting it all? See, most of what goes on this planet is false. Most of it is based on a mountain of lies. Unless we're willing to admit that we just don't know, then we will continue to try and find solutions inside of this decrepit pile of endless lies and illusions. And in that case, we will fail. It's guaranteed. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to say, hey, Saratoga, we don't know. That's why we're listening to you, or that's why we're looking for answers, because we don't know. We already say we don't know. Yes, I understand that. I understand that pretty much everybody's saying that. But my point is, I'm not talking about, what's the answer inside of this mess? When I say don't know, I mean a place of absolute total humility, where all your defenses are down in terms of God and the universe and love and your heart. And you finally just give up with letting the ego push you into finding answers in places where those answers do not exist. That's what I'm talking about when I say we don't know. So let's come back to the quantum field. Think about it like this. Every single bit of matter on this planet exists as an assortment of atoms, molecules, and subatomic particles. Those energy particles are arrayed in an infinite number of forms of energy and life. Now, there is a fundamental blueprint of intelligence that holds all of these forms together in their current state. Now, the space between all of these particles of light and energy is known as the quantum field of information. That space is infinite, and it's not limited to time and space as we understand it. Now, in that quantum field, everything that exists is interconnected. Now, here's the cool thing. At this level of things, at that quantum level, no one owns anything. At that level, the controllers don't own the planet, and they don't own us. This is the field of infinite possibilities. Now, don't you think it's a good idea to get oriented in a field where the controllers don't own anything? I think it's a pretty good idea. See, unless we get oriented in that field of infinite possibilities, we will be stuck in this ridiculous play of constantly living through all of the controllers' misery, the pain, and the suffering that they love to cause. But in order to get truly oriented in that quantum field, we have to give up our egos. See, the ego is all about defining things as pieces, as parts, as things, as people, all of which are in conflict with one another, all of which exist in separation from one another. Whereas the quantum field is about absolute total unity of all that is. It's kind of the opposite of how the ego functions. So we cannot be fully oriented in the quantum field and yet continue to let the ego define who we are. See, what you need to understand is that the ego wants to keep you here and it wants to keep you small. And that can actually be totally self-evident when you realize that it's that abusive voice in the head that is the most brutal when it comes to tearing you down. The most abusive voice in your life is most likely the one that lives in your head. Is that what you're going to allow to run the show? To run the show of your existence here? See, it's in the quantum field that identities can shift. And we need to shift our identities in terms of how we see ourselves. Now, let me clarify what I mean when I say shift our identities. What I mean is, how do we see ourselves in the universe and at what level? I'm not suggesting, well, shift your identity. You can go from being a human to a cat or a human to a dog or a tree. I don't mean it like that, because that's still, that kind of stuff is still on the same plane, the same level, the same problem. So when I say shift our identities, I'm really referring to how we see ourselves in the context of the universe and of evolution. Do we see ourselves as downtrodden victims, or do we understand ourselves to be empowered creators? That's the kind of thing I'm referring to. So one way we can start is by living a life that is aligned with how we know the world should be. We need to live a life that is aligned with what our hearts tell us is true. Now, right now on this planet, the controllers and all their minions have established the strongest amplitude of horrific negative frequencies. They use the media and social media to amplify those negative frequencies. And if we buy into what they're saying, then what we actually do is we allow our minds to resonate with those frequencies, which only serves to amplify them further. Now, the reason that we don't get educated about things like the quantum field of information and frequencies and energy and vibration is because in knowing these things, we acquire power. We acquire power at a metaphysical level. Metaphysical does not mean separate from physical. It doesn't mean airy-fairy out there somewhere. Metaphysical includes physical and beyond it. It means it's a greater expansion of having only a merely physical experience. It's an expansion of consciousness and energy and power and strength. That's what the true meaning of metaphysical is, beyond just only seeing yourself in the physical realm of this universe. Now, knowing that and experiencing that for all of us, that's what the controllers fear the most. They know they can't contend with that. See, they can't contend with it really because to keep their game going, to keep their whole gig intact, they have to stay in a very small arena of low vibrational frequencies. They have to stay there. They're actually, weirdly enough, they're more imprisoned than we actually are. Isn't that weird? But they want to keep us where they are, which is why they keep us divided and fighting and in fear. Because in that low-level state, it's nearly impossible to access and activate your life at a quantum level. That's because fear and anger are all about separation and lies, whereas the quantum universe is all about unity, truth, and creation. It's simply a much higher level of intelligence that will become available to you if you can become oriented in that way. Now, I'll tell you right now what the controller's ultimate goal is. They want to lock us down in every conceivable way so that we do not have the freedom to create. See, they know that if they can do that, then they can bring our evolution to a grinding halt. So, we are the ancestors who have the power to take this to another level. Our responsibility is ancestral. If we continue to wallow in confusion, in fear, and in anger, then that's what we will be offering as a contribution to humanity's future. And that's not much, you guys. We are much better than that. So here's what I encourage you to do right now. Take note of everything that your mind is attached to that is not leading to a beautiful life. I mean this on the level of thought and belief, not necessarily just the physical. See, the physical follows thought and belief. So you want to start with the origin of what is manifesting. And the origin can be found in thought. Now, notice the different projections that you impose on everything in your life. Are you willing to let go of any of that? Or maybe even all of it if necessary? Because when we project on things in our lives, we're not seeing them as they really are. What we're seeing is our projected interpretation of what they are, which isn't really the truth. So the way to start a new process is to come to terms with where you are right now. And it really comes down to knowing when you've had enough. When you've had enough of your own failed ways of looking at things. And are you finally feeling open to something new, a new way of looking at things? Because whatever beliefs you are attached to, those beliefs will keep you anchored to where you are right now. Those beliefs act as a weight on your consciousness that prevents you from connecting with a higher plane of reality. So I think that's enough for now. I'll continue talking about this and developing it further in other videos. So we can start talking about what we will need to confront within ourselves in order to get free enough to do something better and more life-giving. Now, I also want to remind you before I go that I will be opening the doors to my Cosmic Journey private membership very soon. So if you think you might be interested in learning what that's about, or maybe even coming into that community with all of us, I do have a wait list open. I will put the link to that below. So you can just get on the wait list, and then you'll be notified when I open the doors. I only do this once or twice a year. So if it's something you think you might want to try or you might want to check out, be sure to put your name on the wait list. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think is ready to open their mind and see things differently. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because I will be back on Tuesdays with all new videos. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Namaste.